Second Chronicles, second part of Chronicles, chapter 24, and the specialness. I don't know how can I make that. Can I make up that word? So that the importance of the reading, they are connected to Saint Stephen Day. I even wrote it in red, so we're gonna have this kind of connection with liturgical colors. And the thing is, but before we'll go into this one, let us go to our gospel reading for today, just for 1 second. And it's in Gospel of Matthew. Matthew, chapter 23, at the very end of the chapter, beginning with verse 34. So 34 to the end of the chapter, which is, I think, 39. That's what I thought. Because it is important to understand one feature of the Bible, let's put it this way. So in the Gospel of Matthew, in chapter 23, Jesus says, "Therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you have killed or crucified, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town. So that So that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar." And then the question is, who is this guy? Because we kind of know who Abel is, okay? Is there anybody who does not know who Abel is? Okay, good. At least everybody knows that. But who is this Zechariah? The thing is that that's the man that we will find in Chronicles. The thing is, in Chronicles, he would be called a little bit differently. We will come to that. But at this point, I just want you to pay attention. The question is why Jesus talks about the people who have been basically murdered for their faith from the very beginning, which is Abel. That's kind of, okay, that's understandable. From the very beginning to the middle of the Bible. Because in our Bible, 2 Chronicles is somewhere of the middle of the what we call Old Testament. Okay? The answer for this is actually in the order of books that we have. In the Hebrew Bible, the order of books is different. Okay? The order of books in such a way that they have 5 books of Moses, same as we do, but then they have a block which is called prophets. And that's where they have their historical books and then the main prophet books. Okay, main like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, 12 minor prophets, and so on and so forth. And then there are writings. Okay, if we want to jump in the Bible for a couple places to look at that, let's go to Gospel of Luke chapter 24. I know you might say, Pastor, this is kind of wild because, we are talking about order of books in the Old Testament, but we are going in the third gospel. But that's really true. Okay, so let's go into Luke chapter 24, the last chapter, when Jesus meets with 2 people on their way to Emmaus. Okay? And he tells them, verse 27, "Beginning with Moses, with all of the prophets, he interpreted to them all scriptures, the things concerning himself." Okay, so we have 3 blocks. Moses, the law of Moses, we have prophets, and we have scriptures. So, just to give you an idea, I want to pass around, it's called Holy Scriptures Tree of Life version. What it is, this particular translation was put together for Jewish community, for those who of Jews or Gentiles who want to believe, in that Jesus is the Messiah. So the order of books here is a little bit different. And in the last section, in writings, or do they have it? Yeah, writings. The 2 Chronicles is the last book. Okay? So that's why when Jesus say from Abel to Zechariah, it's actually covering whole Old Testament period. Okay? So I'll just pass it around and you can just give it, and see how they ordered the books there. Okay, now, there are a couple interesting things that we can see here. Let's go to our text. So what happened here, and for us to understand what's going on here, the passage begins with the death of the guy with the name of Jehoiada. Okay? He was a priest, and his son Zechariah is killed or stoned, murdered in the temple, which is really big problem and sin. Okay? Why all of this why the writers of 2 Chronicles made such a big deal out of that? First of all, this is really bad. But there is another important feature. If we would go like couple steps, couple chapters before, what we will find out is actually this Jehoiada. He is the one who saved the current king of Judah. Okay, so let me erase this thing. Jehoiada. Oh boy. Yeah. Okay, he had a son, Zechariah. Okay, but there was a time, I think, yes? Yes. Right, no. Joash, yes. Okay, so if we will go back to chapter 23 and even earlier 22, what we find out is there was a different dynasty trying to reign over the Judea, and when the mother, who was related to Ahab, somewhat evil king from the north, so when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she rose and destroyed all royal family of the house of Judah. And I'm reading from 2 Chronicles 22:10. But Jehoshabeth, the daughter of the king, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's sons were about to put to death. And she put him and nursed him in the bedroom. And thus Jehoshabeth, the daughter of king, and the wife of Jehoiada, the priest, because she was a sister of, hid him from Athaliah. So what happened is, we have an evil person, evil mother who was trying to get rid of the true descendants of Judean kings. And Jehoiada, with his wife, hid the true person who should have been enthroned king on Judah's throne for, we need to notice that, so 23:1. But in 7th year, Jehoiada took courage and entered into the covenant with the commanders of hundreds, and they placed him. So they hid him for 6 years. And only on the 7th year, they revealed who the true king is. So while he was king under this influence of this priest, he actually did many important and godly things. He gathered priests, he gathered Levites, and they restored the temple, and they restored the worship in the temple. And basically the whole chapter 23 and the first part of 24 is all about that. But now, That's why it is important to notice that our passage begins in 17. When Jehoiada died, okay, what happened there? What happened there, or then, that after the death of Jehoiada, the princes of Judah came and paid homage to the king. And the king listened to them. Okay? What it led to is they abandoned the house of the Lord, so they abandoned the temple, the God of their fathers, and served Asherim and the idols. Okay, who are Asherim? Asherim is a substitute for true God. So they had statues, not like we have. So they replaced the true worship with the false worship. Okay, so they replaced it with the worship of, we would say, like natural forces. Okay, but verse 18 further. And the wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for this guilt of theirs. Notice verse 19. Then verse 19 says, yet he sent prophets among them to bring them back to the Lord. So God, his wrath breaks out. He doesn't like that. He wants them to come back, but to bring them back, instead of punishing them, he sends prophets. Okay? He sends people who know God's will and who preach God's word. So he wants them to come back because of their repentance, or by means of their repentance. Okay? Not by forcing them because they would be surrounded with enemies, or so on and so forth, or by famine, or by outbreaks of sicknesses, or anything like that. So he wanted to pursue them, and persuade them with the word. So what happens then? So what happens then is 19. So these testified against them, but they would not pay attention. And similarly, what we will read in our gospel reading. When Jesus mentions this blood of true witnesses of Abel and Zechariah, so that time period from Abel to Zechariah, so the whole, scriptural coverage, all of those true martyrs would testify against those who were in Jesus' days, because they knew that, you could have listened to the Lord. But the important thing is that, that they would not pay attention, just as in the times of Jesus. Jesus finishes up his part of the speech is, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how long and how many times I've tried to gather your children as hen gathers for chicken, but you did not want. You, Jerusalem, the city who stones the prophets. So those parts resembling unique and similar character to each other, and that's why they are paired together. So therefore, then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Zechariah, son of Jehoiada. Okay, so we have Zechariah, Jehoiada. Important thing is, Zechariah means Yah stands for, Yahweh. Okay, that's kind of name of the Lord. That's obvious. And this is to remember. To remember. Okay? And therefore, okay, to remember not necessarily means our psychological remembering. Okay, we've talked about this many times. In the Bible, to remember is not necessarily in opposition of to forget. Okay? Most importantly, to remember in the Bible is to act upon it. Okay? When God remembers that he has Noah in the middle of the flood, it does not mean that he forgot about Noah and then suddenly, oh, bummer, I forgot. He's floating around, I need to help him. No. From the point of when Noah reaches the top with the flood, God remembers Noah means he's going to act upon this covenant with him, upon this remembrance. So he will act toward Noah to bring to the salvific moment when he will land and everything will begin anew. Okay? Same thing as God remembered children of Israel in book of Exodus chapter 2. And then we have this chapter break. It says that God remembered Israel and the covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we have a chapter break, and usually we stop right there. It's chapter 2, verses 24, 25. And then the next chapter begins how God called out Moses. See, the thing is, in the original text, there is no chapter break. So God remembered covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he was concerned about the slavery that was brought upon Israel in Egypt. Therefore, he immediately goes and calls out Moses to bring them out of this slavery. Okay? So same thing. So the Spirit of God clothed Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, the priest, and he stood above the people and said to them, "Thus says the Lord, why do you break the commandments of the Lord, so that you cannot prosper? Because you have forsaken the Lord, he has forsaken you." Okay? There are some, yes?
Is this the same Zechariah who wrote the book?
No. See, that's what's confusing for us. But, okay. So, all of this happens roughly in probably like 9th century BC. Where's my marker? So it's about 9th century BC. Okay, Zechariah that you mentioned, let me have another color. Is very end of, so it's the very end of 6th or 5th century BC. So the Zechariah the prophet is after exile, after they came back from Babylonian exile, and he writes concerning the reconstruction, or actually building a new temple in Jerusalem. Okay? These guys, at this point, they are under, under the powers of Syria, not even Assyria, not even Babylon. So it's far, far away. Okay? But as I said, that's why it is important to understand that the order of books in our Bible is a little bit different from what Jesus would used to. Okay? So in their scrolls, it will be a little bit different. So what we have here is he tells them to be faithful to the Lord. What he tells them is if you forsake God, he will forsake you. He will let you go. If you want to worship other deities, you already have this history. The whole book of Judges basically about one simple, repetitive cycle. People are interested in other gods, and then the nation of those gods come upon them, oppress them, take their harvest, take their food, put them to slavery, and then they cry out. God sets up a leader, and then this leader leads them out of this slavery, and after a while, after a comfort life, they again are interested in other gods. Okay? And then the other nations of other gods come, and so on and so forth. It's the whole book is like about 5 or 6 repetitive cycles in the book of Judges. So here we have it as a reminder. But on the other hand, he tells them at this time, in their moment, like, why do you do this? But instead of listening to him, what did they do? But they conspired against him, and by command of the king. So, see, that's what's really bad. The guy who was saved by his father, okay? He was a son, okay? But he was rescued by his father. He kills his son, okay? And by command of the father, the king, they stone him with stones in the court of the house of the Lord. So right in the temple, not in the holy place, but most likely, that's what Jesus refers to, in the court of the house, between the house itself and the altar, they stoned him. And thus Joash the king did not remember the kindness of Jehoiada. See, in Hebrew, that makes a word play. The king did not remember of what Jehoiada did to him and killed his son, whose name is Yahweh will remember. Okay? So it's, with the name and with an act of what king does, the author of 2 Chronicles makes this kind of nice wordplay. So he did not remember the father had shown to him, but killed his son. And when he was dying, he said, "May the Lord see and avenge." Okay, so he is looking not for his own vengeance, not for, he doesn't claim that, this kind of blood connection, that, my people will go, my sons will go after you, or my relatives go after you. No, he prays to God. He asks God to avenge one way or another. So what actually happens is, after that, it's not in our text, but it's still interesting. What happens is the guy who was appointed by God goes after the king. So it's not within this bloodline anymore, but since he prayed to God, God made this plan possible. What we see here is, at the end of the year, the army of Syrians came up against Joash. They came to Judah and Jerusalem and destroyed all the princes of the people from among the people and sent all their spoils to the king of Damascus. Okay, whom they destroyed? Not all the citizens of Jerusalem. They first of all went after spoil, yes, but the people that they destroyed is all the princes. How did our passage begin? Now, after death of Jehoiada, the princes of Judah came, and that princes of Judah persuade king to turn to other gods, to false gods. So God used Syrians to punish those guys, that they drove away attention of the true king from the true worship. So, though the army of Syrians had come with few men, the Lord delivered into their hands the great army, because Judah has forsaken God, the Lord, the God of their fathers. Thus they executed judgment on Joash. And when they had departed from him, what happens further is we have a guy. Where is that? Huh? I lost it.
I lost you.
That's okay. If you're lost, that's okay. If I'm lost, that's terrible stuff. Okay, never mind. So what is important to see here is he was pursued, the princes who took away, as I said, attention of the king from true worship, they were punished by Syrians. In the book of, in the 2 Kings, we do not have an exact parallel story, but what we have there is a very interesting thing. In chapter 5, for example, we have Naaman, the guy who is a chief commander of Damascus, or therefore Syrian army. He comes and looks for the help from Israelite prophet Elisha. Okay? That's the guy who should be washed, 7 times in Jordan and so on and so forth. Okay? We know all of that story. But even before, in the first book of Kings, in chapter 19, we have something very, very special. Let's go there for a second, because we need to understand all of our historical chapters in the proper context. In chapter 19 in 1 Kings, what we have here is Elijah. So what happens in 19 happened before this, a little bit, like probably 30 years. What we have here is Elijah being driven by Jezebel. He goes into the wilderness and he comes back to the same mountain, Mountain Horeb, or sometimes it's called Sinai. So it's the same mountain, 2 different names, no worries about that. What happened there is he he cries out to the Lord, and Lord tries to comfort him. Okay? And then he cries out again, so he doesn't really listen to what God says to him. Therefore, Lord simply gives him commands. And commands are very, very interesting. So let us go to verse 15. So 1 Kings 19, beginning with verse 15. 15 and further. Okay? And the Lord said, Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you will arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu, son of Nimshi, you shall anoint to be king over Israel. And Elijah, son of Shaphat, of Abel Meholah, you shall anoint to be a prophet over in your place. Okay, actually, Elijah does only one thing out of these three. He does only third one. He anoints Elisha. Okay, and then Elisha kind of had to pick up not fulfilled pieces, and he anoints the king over Damascus. It doesn't really ring a bell to us because we live in somewhat different culture. But with all ancient people, that immediately would caught their attention. You have a prophet from Israel going to another country and anoint the king for another country. Okay? This is weird. Seriously, for them, that was off. Why? Because when you anoint a king, you anoint him as the Son of God, that particular God in whose name you anoint the king. Okay? So when king of Syria goes through this procedure, he basically changes his allegiance from whatever gods he used to worship before to true God, Yahweh. Okay? There is another important thing. When you anoint somebody, and in the Bible we have three types of officers that should be anointed. It's priests, kings, and prophets. Okay? When you anoint somebody, the word is related to the word Messiah. Okay? In Hebrew, it's Mashiach. Okay? So you basically make them messiahs with small, not with capital M, but with small m. Yes, Charlie?
Wouldn't this kind of upset the local congregation believers and the church leaders when someone would do this?
You need to clarify. The congregation were,
Well,
like in Israel, if he would go and anoint the king over Syria,
it seems like there would be some rebellion going on. Like, how dare he come in and do this to us? If you know what I mean. I don't know.
on the Syrian part or Israel part?
I would say on that. I guess my question is for the Israel part. Because Israel kept leaving the commandments and all that.
Mm-hmm. See, the problem is, okay, historically, where we are right now, actually goes back to your question about split of the kingdoms. Okay, we have kingdom of the south and kingdom of the north. And Syria is right here. So that's Damascus. The thing is, in this time, the person, Ahab, who ruled over north, they really fell away from God. I don't want to say they wouldn't care what the prophet would do, but the point is, when he comes, when his disciple, Elisha, comes there and anoints the king, and actually these guys accept this anointment, which tells us that these guys are converted. They are converted Gentiles. maybe not every one of them, but at least the leadership. Because the king is anointed, the chief officer, the main, military guy goes and looks for help from the prophet of the Lord, not from anything else. They take it they take it much more seriously than these guys. Okay?
Well, the anointing didn't cause agitation with the people.
Nope, not in Syria, not as far as we know. Okay? So that's what we have in the book of Acts. When gospel goes to Gentiles, Jews became, jealous. Okay? Unfortunately, in this time, northern Israel even did not become jealous. They couldn't care less. Okay? So that's an important thing. So to finish it all, what we see here is the fact that, I wanted to just draw your attention to two important facts. That we need to, general thing, we need to understand that the order of the books in our Bible are great, and it's good, and it's very helpful. But, when you read some of the passages of New Testament, it is important to know that the order of the Bible, traditional order of the Bible, books in the Bible, in the days of Jesus was somewhat different. Okay? The second thing is, unfortunately, people, like King Joash, can be persuaded by their own leaders, to leave to go away from true God, and it's up to people to keep their faith. Basically, that's the main thing. Okay? Any questions or comments?